Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes is a cautionary principle that emphasizes the importance of forging your own path rather than attempting to follow directly in the footsteps of someone who has achieved greatness. When a person steps into the shoes of a predecessor who has cast a long shadow, they inevitably invite comparisons and face the immense pressure of living up to the legacy of the person before them. This law warns that trying to mimic or replace a towering figure often sets one up for failure, as they become trapped in a cycle of expectations that are difficult to surpass. To truly succeed, one must differentiate themselves and establish their own unique identity, rather than trying to replicate the achievements of others. The essence of this law is the understanding that greatness, especially the kind that transforms history or leaves a lasting legacy, is incredibly rare. When someone is considered a great man or woman, it is because they possess an extraordinary combination of talents, vision, timing, and circumstances that allowed them to stand out and create something monumental. For the person who follows them, the expectations are not just to succeed, but to match or surpass that greatness. This is where the danger lies. Greatness often cannot be replicated, and those who attempt to do so are doomed to be overshadowed or, worse, seen as mere imitators. The successor to a great leader or figure is always under scrutiny, and every action is compared to their predecessor. Even if the new person is competent and skilled, they will almost always fall short in the eyes of those who idealize the previous leader. The more you try to emulate the person who came before you, the more you reinforce the idea that you are their replacement, rather than an original force of your own. This dynamic creates a perpetual comparison that is difficult to escape. To avoid this trap, it is essential to break free from the legacy of the great figure and establish your own identity, your own style, and your own way of doing things. The key to power in this situation is to innovate, to surprise, and to create something new that defines you rather than living in the shadow of someone else's achievements. By forging a new path, you can sidestep the comparisons and create a legacy of your own that distinguishes you from your predecessor. History is littered with examples of leaders and figures who tried to follow in the footsteps of a predecessor and failed, not necessarily because they lacked talent or ambition, but because they became ensnared in the expectations and legacy of the person who came before them. The problem lies in the fact that when a figure has achieved monumental success, their accomplishments are often seen as the pinnacle, and any deviation from their methods or accomplishments is viewed negatively. Even if the successor is successful in their own right, they will often be measured by the impossible standard of their predecessor. Avoiding stepping into a great man's shoes also means understanding that the world changes, and what worked for one person in a specific context and time may not work for another. Times shift, priorities change, and new challenges arise. The tactics, strategies, and approaches that made someone great may no longer be relevant in the current landscape. Clinging to the old ways out of reverence for the predecessor is a surefire way to stagnate. Instead, you must adapt to the new environment, using innovation and creativity to meet the demands of your time. For those who find themselves in a position of following a great figure, it is often beneficial to downplay the connection to the predecessor as much as possible. Distance yourself from their legacy, or, if necessary, even criticize aspects of it to emphasize that you are not bound by the same constraints. This allows you to reset the expectations and carve out a space for yourself, where you can be judged on your own merits rather than in comparison to someone else's glory. Additionally, stepping into a great man's shoes carries the risk of being associated with any mistakes, controversies, or unfinished business that the predecessor left behind. If the great figure's legacy had any unresolved issues or flaws, the new person is often blamed for them or tasked with fixing them, further entangling them in the web of the past. This dynamic can become a significant obstacle to achieving one's own success, as a new figure spends more time dealing with the predecessor's issues than establishing their own power. To truly avoid stepping into a great man's shoes, You must also understand the emotional and psychological hold that a great predecessor can have on those around them. People often cling to the memory of the great leader, longing for a return to the golden age they represented. They may resist change, holding on to the old ways and rejecting new ideas that do not align with the past leader's methods. In this situation, the challenge is not just to differentiate yourself, but to win over those who are loyal to the previous figure. This requires careful navigation of loyalties and perceptions. You may need to appear respectful of the predecessor's legacy while slowly steering people toward your own vision and methods. There is also a deeper lesson in this law about self-awareness and the nature of power. True power comes from authenticity and originality, not from imitation. Trying to replicate someone else's greatness limits your potential and forces you into a mold that may not suit you. By stepping out of the shadow of the great man, you free yourself to discover your own strengths, talents, and opportunities for success. The pursuit of power should always be personal, reflecting your own ambitions and capabilities, rather than trying to live up to someone else's story. Ultimately, Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes teaches us that following greatness is a precarious path fraught with pitfalls. The key to success is not to attempt to replace or replicate that greatness, but to carve out your own identity, forging a new path that reflects your vision, talents, and time. Only by breaking free from the past can you establish yourself as a powerful and independent force in your own right, building a legacy that is uniquely yours.